Hello and welcome to another episode of the Christian Reeve podcast. And today I'm talking about a serious topic. I know that I've covered a lot of serious topics before, but I guess this one is a little bit closer to home for me. Um, I've never really spoken about this as candidly as I'm going to and in detail. And I'm not sure how much will actually come out because there's quite a few instances that I want to go through to kind of illustrate the levels of it. Um, but it's kind of my understanding that most people get bullied at school or at some point in their lives. I mean, it even happens in, adult life. So bullying is a part of life, but that doesn't make it acceptable. And it's particularly brutal when you're at school age. I've always kind of been a bit dumbfounded by the reasons behind bullying because, with certain people, it's obvious it's because, they're getting bullied at home, so they're taking it out on you, or it's like some sort of inferiority complex to make the bullier, feel more, I guess, kind of superior to everyone else. I mean, that's at least what they tell you. But, in a lot of instances, when I would experience bullying from certain people, I mean, the people that bullied me actually did have that inferiority complex. It was really obvious. And if you looked at their home lives, you could understand, exactly where it's coming from. But with other people, it wasn't so obvious. I mean, I guess some people are just like assholes. I don't know. It's really difficult to say. But let me take you back. So when I was at primary school level, so those in the UK will know what age I'm talking about. But for those internationally, primary school is kind of between the ages of about 5 to 11. So I guess I was getting bullied around the kind of 9 years old mark. Excuse me, I'm drinking coffee. It's still the morning here. um, and this was pretty light bullying, but it was my first kind of experience of it. And I was kind of distressed. I mean, the bullying came at a time when I was about 9 years old and my dad had left the country. I didn't really see him a lot throughout my childhood, like a couple of times a year. And that got better, like when I was older. When I was about 10 years old onwards, it got really good, and it's all good now. But basically, my parents were separated, so I would just never really see him that much, and there were a lot of reasons for that. But basically, the point being that he left, I guess, he obviously we weren't living together anyway, but he left, I guess, when I properly left the country around this age of 8 years old, I think, for a year. And that was a really difficult time for me in my life. As a kid, I didn't really know how to properly digest it. He had explained to me that it wasn't, anything to do with me, obviously. It was just a young man finding his way in life, doing something different with his life. Do you know what I mean? I get it. But for me, needing a father figure around, it was really difficult for me, and I felt like he didn't want me or something, or like I was just not good enough. All the kind of standard stuff that goes through someone's head when someone leaves. um, Actually, funnily enough, now we're thinking about it, I can remember a time. I mean, this isn't funny, but it just illustrates how difficult it was. It was about 6 months in, I think, and my dad tells a story that he had called me from a payphone or something like that. It was really difficult for him to get access to a phone back then. This was early 2000, so it was a long time ago. Things were different. So yeah, he was trying to call me, and I heard from him very seldom, probably once or twice a year. During that year, it was really difficult to be in touch with each other. And I just remember crying down the phone and being really upset and wanting him to come back. And just being very confused by it all. So that kind of paints the picture of what I was going through at that particular moment. I became very aggressive at school because I was unhappy. I guess I was kind of depressed in a way. I just didn't really understand how I felt. I just kind of felt angry at everyone and everything. And I would lash out at people. And a lot of people kind of, and bear in mind, we're all kids. We're all like 8, 9 years old. So you don't understand. You just think like, oh, what's his problem? Like, is he crazy or something? You can't kind of understand things and be empathetic towards each other necessarily. Only people that could really do that are like teachers. And the teachers gave me a hard time as well. The teachers were the people turned around to me and saying, oh, he's a delinquent, he won't do anything with his life. And it's like, oh, if you would take the time to understand what I was going through, maybe you could have given me the support I needed. I don't know. It's just an idea. It's a thought. But yeah, so I was going through all of that. I was very angry at everything. And I guess, I was very vulnerable. So there was a guy, and I'm not going to name any names in this, by the way, because A, it's not important, and B, I can't really remember any of their... I remember some of their names, like second names and stuff. Actually, I remember all of them. Okay, I'll do them a solid and give them the free pass. But like anyone that listens to this that did bully me, you know who you are, and that's on your conscience at the end of the day, not mine. I'm just using it for a podcast, and using it as a way to help other people who had to deal with the same shit. But anyway, so this guy, he starts bullying me. I can't really remember why, because we were pretty, not friendly, but we would play football together sometimes. Like, there was no real immediate issue that we had with each other. And to this day, I still don't really understand that. I mean, we were just kids, like 8 years old, so there's not really much to be kind of delved into with this. But yeah, it got really bad. I stood up to him. He had a brother who was taller, and they were threatening to like beat the shit out of me. I was very outnumbered, and I didn't really know what to do. And this is the thing. I went to my mum and kind of just laid this situation out and said, hey, like, this is what's going on. And she was obviously concerned. So, they took me to the principal or headmaster. And then, inevitably, they kind of put us in the same space together. And this is how I think things should be dealt with, right? Because, first of all, everyone's going to jump and say, oh, what, you snitched? No, it wasn't like that. My first inclination was not to snitch. It never is. I always try to deal with the problem head on. And if I'm like dealt with no other, kind of situation, then maybe I'll think about my options. Do you know what I mean? But like I try my very best to always like deal with a situation behind closed doors, because I don't like to get authorities involved, because they always kind of fuck it up, or they always kind of just... Like, okay, at school, a lot of the time when you're in a fight, it doesn't matter if you started the fight or not, or if someone's bullying you or beating you up, like, you still manage to get in trouble. And sometimes, if you retaliate, you get in more trouble than the person who started it, which is fucking bullshit. But, that's just the failed school system, I guess. But at this primary school level, it was okay, because the headmaster was this really eccentric Australian dude. So I think he was very old school anyway, he was quite a decent man, and he basically just sat us down in a room together, me and the bully, and just said, look, talk to each other, apologise, and figure it out. And the funny thing is, we did that, we shook hands, and then we became friends after that, like actually really good friends. And it's weird, like, kind of respect for each other. And I've experienced this another time in my life, which I'll get to as well soon, in adult life. But it's funny how that kind of scenario works. It's funny how it kind of... It's better to, like, okay, snitching on each other and like, doing all that shit is low, and you can't really have respect for the other person, right? But sitting each other down, like, okay, yeah, the person knows that you've gone and spoken to someone about it, but that's forgivable. Do you know what I mean? Whereas if you just snitched and you're trying to get them in trouble and you're trying to just absolve yourself in that way, what can you really respect? How could you shake the person's hand if they've done that? Do you know what I mean? So this was a very good kind of approach, and it worked out okay. And it's funny because in adult life, I had a situation where I was working at a supermarket, right? I was about 18 or 19 years old, and the same situation happened, but it wasn't exactly bullying. It was like a misunderstanding. So basically, there was a guy that I used to work with. He's a really sort of big African guy. He started off working as like a security guard, and like everyone really liked him. He's a really top bloke. And then about 2 years into the job, he randomly decided that he wanted to change and become like an employee in the store. Apologies. And it was kind of a bit of a random career change, but fair play to the guy. He wants to do something different. I think it had something to do with like more flexible hours, possibly better pay. I don't know the reasons, but he explained it and it sounded logical. And security work is very unforgiving. It's very tough work, and he would often, I think he would work the entire day. So he would come in at like when the store opened and close with us. So 7 or 6 in the morning till 11 at night or 10 at night. So it was brutal. But yeah, you could tell about a couple of weeks in that he was really struggling with this change, because he was kind of used to being sort of like his own boss, like being the security guard. He wasn't controlled by us. If anything, he would just kind of be, I don't know, like regularly liaising with the store manager and stuff, but basically like working with them, not for them kind of thing. But when he became one of us, he had to work, for us or for the management, right? And that lit a fire up his ass. Like, he did not like that. And funnily enough, I actually could relate to him on that, because I don't like being told what to do. Even to this day, if someone starts telling me what to do, I mean, it depends on the context and who they are. But if, like, okay, for instance, I was playing basketball the other day and someone started telling me what to do, and I'm like, I have fucking played the game before, Like, who the fuck are you? I've just met you and you're telling me what to do. And I kept it together, like, because I'm an adult, you know what I mean? But I did kind of drop some comments here and there, like, I have played before. Like, this ain't my first rodeo, kid. And I think that's how you deal with it when you're older. You kind of just learn to laugh it off or not get aggressive and emotional about it. But obviously when I was younger, it's difficult to do that. You know what I mean? You lash out. You react badly to things like this. But anyway, this guy, back to the guy. So he's struggling with this. He's getting used to the work. He worked very hard, had a good work ethic and everything. But didn't like being told what to do. And obviously, because I'd been there a while, technically I was kind of, I guess, more senior to him. They were already kind of priming me or preparing me for the next level of management, which they never gave to me, by the way. And you should have. I deserved that bloody position. But anyway. I'm not bitter at all about it. No, I literally don't care anymore. But it did serve as a good. We'll get into that in another podcast. If you guys want to hear about my me working in a supermarket more, then let me know. Drop me some messages and I'll do a podcast on that, because there's so much to talk about. But anyway, so this guy, basically one morning, we're stacking shelves on like a meat section, right? And the meat section was notoriously freezing, and it was usually one of the first places that we'd start stacking in the store. Like, we would do it section by section, and this was actually the hour before the store opened. So we would really quickly do it together. We'd get like everyone on this section at one time. It was actually a pretty efficient way of doing it. Like, even the management would get involved and stuff. Like, we were actually very efficient for the most part. So yeah, shout out to that team. But yeah, this one morning, the manager so this is important as well. The African guy is in his 40s. He has a wife and kids. You know what I mean? So there is that kind of age difference right there. So he grew up in Africa, and he grew up in a kind of society where, you know, you give respect to your elders. And I'm used to that. That's what I grew up with in England too, but it's a bit looser. Do you know what I mean? Like in England, especially now, you know, it doesn't matter what age your manager is. It's all down to merit, or at least it should be. You know what I mean? It's down to merit, experience, and just how much of a good manager they actually are. Shouldn't matter what age they are. But he's not, or at least he wasn't, you know, within that line of thinking. He sees a young guy and he has a problem with it, right? So he kind of respected the manager, who was at the time probably in his mid-20s, but he definitely twitched a bit. He didn't like it, right? And here's me, 18, 19 years old, and basically the manager goes to me, hey, get him to do this and this, you switch jobs, do this and this. And I'm like, okay. And I didn't think anything of it. I just go over and I explain to this guy, hey, could you do this? And then I'll do this. And he just looks at me kind of blankly and is like, no, I'm just going to keep doing this. And I'm like, this is bizarre. This is surreal. What's going on right here? I'm like, hey, so like you need to do this. Like the manager's told me, like giving me this information that we need to, you know, swap these things. So can you do this? And he just wouldn't do it. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing then. Manager comes up to me like maybe 20 minutes later and says, and this is how I can prove that I didn't snitch or anything, any shit like that, right? Because the manager came up to me and goes, why is he not doing this? Did you ask him to do this? And I was like, yes. And he's like, well, why isn't he doing it? And I'm like, well, I don't know. Go ask him yourself. I don't know. I gave him the information that you gave me. And I told him that you said it. So, yeah. And basically, from this point onwards, that African guy basically would just ignore me all the fucking time for like 2 months. It was ridiculous. He would, if I would say hello, he would ignore me. If I would ask for some help, he would ignore me. He would walk past me with like an attitude. He was like put like this. I was a teenager, like 18, 19, right? And I had like mood swings still, even at that point, which I'm embarrassed to say now. But, I was still growing up, guys, okay? But, I was still kind of growing up, and he was acting even more immature than I was. And it was startling because here is a man in his 40s with a wife and kids. Like, what the fuck is he doing? And basically the final straw for me was like, we had this thing with lifts where there was like a courtesy thing where you would kind of leave the lifts open for people if they're waiting to go into the lift and stuff. And because it's like there's always people waiting to go into the lifts up and down, like from the warehouse into the store, right? And he just would always slam it when he was near me. It was obviously like a little fuck you, but without actually saying it. And a lot of the time I would just let it go. But after like 2 months of this shit, I've already got loads of stuff on them in my personal life, and just the job in general is grating me. There was a lot of shit going on in my life anyway. So I just didn't need this added shit at work, right? So I just get pissed off and I'm like, fuck this. Because he literally just sees me standing there with the cage and won't actually open up the door for me. Like, he slams it in front of me and I'm like, fuck this guy. So I go talk to the management and I'm like, listen, this is the situation. This is when it started. Can we do something about this situation? And again, this wasn't snitching. This was me trying to say, hey, I don't know, can we just like get each other in a room or something? Like, I think I might have even suggested that, to be honest, because at the end of the day, I wanted him to talk to me. I wanted to find out what the problem was, because I didn't know what the problem was. I didn't know, like, obviously I know now, but I didn't know what the issue was and why he was ignoring me. I was like, fuck, what have I done? Like, what the hell? Because I liked the guy. I thought he's awesome. I really respected him and thought he was a decent bloke. So basically they had to get us both in a room with two managers. It's the most awkward one of the most awkward experiences in my life. It's a sort of a round table with four of us sitting there and me and him either side. And you can tell he's bitterly uncomfortable. And so am I. But I'm open, I'm willing to find out, what's wrong. And he lays out the situation, and slowly the realization comes like, it's about being told what to do, and it's because he thinks I snitched. And I explained the situation to him, and he's like, oh. And I think he kind of felt like a fool afterwards. He was like, oh shit, I was angry at this kid, and actually it wasn't how I thought it was. And I think he just felt really embarrassed after that. And I mean, to be honest with you, I didn't relish in that. I didn't feel any satisfaction. I just wanted the situation to be over so I could just get the fuck on with my life. And we shook hands. It was all good. We were friends after that. No problem, right? But it was exactly the same feeling as that time when I was dealing with my bully back in the day. And okay, this guy didn't bully me, but it was kind of ignoring. In a way, it is like, it's uncomfortable. Do you know what I mean? There are behaviours that people display in life, in adult life, that make life difficult. You know, if you have people that are difficult to work with, it can kind of ruin your experience of your job. And jobs can be really brutal and demanding anyway, especially customer service jobs. Like, it's so thankless. You want to be friends with everyone you work with, because if you have people that you don't get on with, in addition to having that thankless job, then it's just going to be the most brutal job ever. So you want to try and get on with everyone if you can. It's impossible to get on with everyone because there's going to be some clashes and it's just inevitable. But I think if you try really hard, you can kind of manage it after a while, and it is possible. But yeah, so that's kind of like the first situation, and then obviously like a very similar situation that happened as I got older. But I want to move into the proper bullying that I experienced when I was in high school, because this was, for me, a very difficult time in my life, probably the most difficult in my life. In high school, I didn't actually get bullied that much. I was very lucky. High school, when I look back, I have very fond memories. I spent a lot of time hanging out in London. I had all these friends in London and stuff. I had friends at school as well, but it was very on off in terms of who I would hang out with. It's just teenagers, you know, it's how it is. You know, I had all these different hobbies and interests, like going to music concerts, skateboarding, just going to London in general, you know, all sorts of different things that I like to do, and different groups of people I would regularly hang out with. So high school was great for the most part. And the very small bit of bullying that I did receive would just be like, we call them chavs, but I don't know what other countries would call them. Basically people that would listen to like, I guess pop and rap music at the time in the early 2000s in Britain, that seemed to have an attitude with people that listen to rock and metal. But for the most part at our school, everyone was kind of friendly with each other, so I didn't really experience anything bad. I think there was just kind of like a tension there, but there wasn't really anything that bad, to be honest. We had a pretty decent school. I'm very fond of the school that I went to. If you listen to the podcast that I did with Calamity Hatcher, he's a school friend of mine, and we talk a little bit about some of our experiences at school. And I said in that podcast that, you know, I really liked our school. You know, I owe a lot to our school. So shout out to Hayden School. Yeah, very fond. I can track a lot of things back to those times in terms of what I learned and my experiences and everything. But in terms of the bullying, I mean, it did start a little bit around, I guess, the age of 14, 15. Basically, I had these two friends, and I said I'm not going to name names, so I won't, because, you know, it was a long time ago, and I would hope that both of you have changed. If you are listening to this, I hope you've grown up and you've stopped being the way that you were, because people do change. I'm a totally different person to who I was back then, and believe me, I wasn't any saint. I could be a dick. But there was a reason that when we used to hang out together at school, people would refer to me as the nice one. That was actually, I found that out later, but that was apparently a nickname that I had because you both were so horrible to everyone else. And this is the thing, like, they would always say to me, and again, this started, I used to hang out at London quite a lot, And these two guys were beginning to hang out in London. They had their own friend groups, but we were beginning to hang out together more and more. And when they kind of discovered that I would hang out in London and stuff, and I had these friends, they kind of wanted to join me. And I was up for it. I was like, well, sure, the more the merrier. So they started hanging out with me more and more, and gradually we became better friends. And then at one point, I considered them to be my best friends. We had this like trio thing going, and we had some good times. It wasn't all bad. But one of them in particular, I was very close to, and I genuinely considered him to be my best friend at some points. And when they started to be horrible to me, I realised that they would do it to each other. So it was kind of like bitching. So if they were together, they would bitch about me. But if I was with one or the other, they would start bitching about the one that wasn't there. It was so shitty. And like initially, I wouldn't say I joined in on it exactly, but I would kind of like laugh along, but I wouldn't really properly embrace it because I was like, well, this is shitty. Like, because the first thought that I had was, okay, well, when you guys are together, you probably say the same shit about me. And this became really apparent when we would all be together, and it seemed to be because one of them in particular, the one that I was closest to, would sort of just pick on any indeterminate day who was going to be the butt of all the jokes, and it would either be me or the other guy. And when it was the other guy, he didn't take it very well, but I think he took it better than me because I was very insecure and I wasn't always very good with throwing jokes back. I mean, they called it banter, and I understand, and sometimes it was, but to be honest, it was so consistent and so often that it stopped being banter and it actually just started being bullying. It was just not nice. And it got even worse when they would get other people involved. So you'd have like a group of people throwing insults at you. And that happened a few times to me. It happened quite a few times to the other guy. And also sometimes they would just pick on random people. Just random friends of mine at school, people that, maybe didn't have a lot of friends or who weren't very popular or whatever, you know what I mean? And then I kind of realized like, okay, this is proper bullying. And then it began to get more and more bad towards me. And I basically cut off ties with them. I was pissed off at them. I was like, fuck this. It basically is bullying. And I'm not putting up with it. It's shitty. And I don't remember ever having like a really big like break off with them at that point. But I was just kind of like, I did my own thing. They would give me shit whenever they saw me, but they would just kind of do their own thing. But I was pissed off, I was upset, I was hurt, and I had my really bad self-esteem issues, so this stuff reinforced that. It was unrelenting, and at times it would make going to school bad. Like I remember there were days that I dreaded going to school. And like I said, this was kind of around the 15, 16 mark. So we were just about to finish school. So it couldn't really destroy it for me. And I just used to hang out with other people. So I would often not see them, apart from the classes we might have together. We just fell out of touch. And eventually they just would ignore me and then all was right in the world. But it basically got at its worst when we went to sixth form. Because we did a business class together. And we were in very close proximity to each other. It was a class of about maybe 8 or 10 people, so it was very intimate. And to their credit, when they first saw me in this class, I think they were like, "Hey, how's it going?" And I was like, "Well, I'm not going to be a dick. I'll be nice." You know what I mean? Like, it's been a while. Maybe they've changed. I don't know. I naively thought that it would be different, or that maybe... I don't know. I'm always I'm a forgiving person. I don't ever forget, but I'm willing to forgive people, and I was willing to forgive them. So we kind of got the band back together, so to speak, and we started hanging out again. And initially, it was nice. They realised that I was really good at business, so I would kind of like help them out occasionally with their business work and stuff, and we would kind of hang out. And there would be occasional jokes and banter and stuff, but I kind of recognised initially that it was just banter. It wasn't anything bad. But then, inevitably, we fell into that circle again, where they would target me. But this time, instead of it just being like, you know, this guy on this day, this guy on this day, or whatever, it was like me all the fucking time. And some of the worst times were like us. We would often go smoking outside on breaks and stuff, or in free periods, and they would just like fucking throw shit at me, like trash at me, or just, I don't know, just throw insults and stuff. There was one particular time I remember. This happened quite often when we were in business class and the teachers weren't present, and they would throw stuff at me or do spit bubbles at me and stuff. And it was really disgusting. And, you know, I was just trying to do my work and get on with shit, and they just kept trying to distract me and be assholes. And I just quickly realized, like, this has taken a new level. This has gone beyond what it was. You know, before it was like friends taking it too far and then sort of becoming bullying, but this was just straight out bullying. They didn't want to be my friend. They just wanted to like harass me and torture me, really. And I'm sure in their minds they'll probably look back and see it differently, but you know, this is what you put me through. And I've never spoken about this before, but you know, now I have this platform, and I want to kind of just put it out there that, you know, bullying is never okay. And it doesn't matter, like, okay, yeah, you never beat me up or anything. If anything, the one that I was closest to actually saved me from a couple of fights. And this is what I mean, like, this is why I'm not naming you, because there were times when I considered you to be my friends, and you protected me, and you were there for me. So there is a little bit of loyalty there still, but at the same time, you put me through so much shit and torment that I couldn't consider you guys as friends anymore. And when I look back on sixth form, that was the hardest time for me. Like, I don't have any fond memories of being a sixth form, because it was, the first year was just so unrelenting and horrible for me, that I just didn't know what the fuck to do. I remember one time actually coming home and bursting into tears because I was so tormented, scared, upset, frustrated. Like, what you guys don't know is that, like, I was actually dealing with depression on and off throughout those years. I'd always been dealing with it. Like I said at the beginning, you know, I had the shit with my dad, which kind of just fucked up my mind and always kind of made me feel like I had this inferiority complex in my mind where I never felt good enough. And so whenever I would get bullied, you can imagine how those feelings were reinforced, and I would feel 10 times worse. Here was me trying to be liked and trying to, you know, be friends with people and be a part of it. And, you know, I just couldn't, because people like you would just make me feel like nothing, like just a lowly piece of shit. And obviously with all those things of like throwing trash at me, mocking me, like calling me, okay, so we used to have this term boffin. It was like a nasty term for when you would call someone basically like a nerd, a geek, someone that like studies too hard and never does anything else. And you guys knew that I had a life outside of business work and schoolwork. The reason that I did well at business was because I just had a natural inclination to it, and I worked hard. That's the thing, like, you know, there's nothing wrong with working hard in life, and I really hope that, you know, your attitude towards work has changed, because I remember when we were doing that course, I finished that course about 3 months early, and it meant that I actually got to finish school earlier, and I didn't have to, like, sit there with you guys. And you guys were still struggling. I think one of you was actually failing the course as well, like, in terms of struggling. And that's the thing. If we were friends at that point, I would have happily sat down with you and helped you through it and helped you get good grades and stuff. But because you put me through so much torture and torment, I was like, no, fuck you guys. Like, why should I do anything for you? And in a way, that kind of served as a little bit of karma for me. I don't know if karma even works that way. But at the time, it felt like a little bit of a win in terms of everything that you put me through and how you'd embarrassed me and everything. And, you know, I guess I just learned at that point to just let it go and focus on my life and move on. And over the years, I've obviously I care less and less, and now it's just a distant memory. But you can always put yourself back in those situations and remember how you felt. You know what I mean? And I forgive you guys. Like, if I saw you in the street, I would say hello, I would shake your hand. But, if we got talking and we were reminiscing, so to speak, I would bring this up to your face happily. And I would say, listen, this is what you put me through. Because while, I can forgive, I can never forget. And I don't think you can ever forget how someone made you feel. It's just one of those things, especially people that bully you. Bullying is a very ruthless thing, and I understand that both of you had shitty home lives. I know one of you had divorced parents, and I don't have parents together, so I could completely reciprocate. But for you, that was actively happening while you were at school, so I understand why that was difficult for you. I'm not excusing that. I'm not saying that that's acceptable in terms of your behaviour, but I understand. I can relate. And to the other friend who I considered my best friend at one point, I knew that you had issues with your father. I know that the way you explained it to me was as though he kind of bullied you. And when you kind of put it that way, I don't know if you put it in those words exactly, but I can't really remember. But I remember thinking that makes sense. But the difference is that, like, you were more likable than your dad. You had, like, I know you looked up to him and you respected him and stuff, but you were different. And I really like, there was this really nice side to you that I really loved, and I always wanted to see, and I just wouldn't see it. And it really kind of just upset me, because I was just like, I know this isn't you. I know this is just some stupid kind of like mask or I don't know, whatever the fuck you want to call it, but something that like you put up as a front. And I was like, stop putting up a front. Like, why can't you just be you? Like, why can't you? Why'd you have to be a bully? You're not a bully, so why'd you have to be one? That's what I don't understand. But yeah, it's not easy to talk about these things. It does bring back memories, but like I said, I've never properly spoken about this before. Maybe not many people know that I've been bullied. I don't really obviously talk about it. It's not something that I'm like, happy about, obviously. There was a lot of other bullying that I experienced in my teen years that was not connected with those guys. This was just generally being a teenager. I was into, like heavy metal and rock music. So obviously I dressed, I had like piercings, black hair. I'd often have emo hair or long hair. I stood out. I looked different. So inevitably I would get shit for that. I had everything from like, I remember sitting on a bus going home and having like people kick my seat or kick my head, the back of my head. I had people blow spit bubbles at me, throw things at me, just openly mock me in public, push me around, spit at me, just every disgusting thing you can imagine I had people do to me. But again, I was very lucky in many respects, because I heard how other people have been bullied, and I'm very thankful that I wasn't bullied that hard. But for me it was more the emotional torment of having those friends that I had that then became my bullies, because there was a point where I genuinely didn't know if it was bullying or banter. I was like, am I being too sensitive, or is this bullying? And there was definitely a point where it went into bullying. It didn't start as bullying. It did start as banter, but then it became bullying because I became like an easy target. And, I kind of wish that I gave less of a fuck back then, because I literally couldn't care less now. If someone gives me shit now, I just laugh it off, because like, who the fuck cares? But back then, I did care. I was very insecure, and I was still trying to understand myself. I didn't have people telling me like, hey Christian, believe in yourself, like you can do anything, you're special. Like, I didn't have people saying stuff like that to me. Or if they did, it wasn't often, and I didn't believe it. I still struggle to this day, to be honest, but because I'm an adult now, I've kind of grown up and learnt to kind of try to be as confident as I can be, and or at least try things. You know, even if I don't have that confidence there, I still try to do my best to kind of motivate myself, you know, because no one's going to do it for me. But yeah, I just wanted to lay out my experiences of bullying, and also just to kind of send out a message to anyone that is being bullied. You know, like, actually, just before I do that, actually, I just want to talk about how fucked this situation put me in. So that, just closing a book on those guys that bullied me in sixth form, they probably don't know this, but even when they were putting me through the most torment possible, I was still trying to protect them. I went to a teacher and I explained how I was getting bullied and what was happening, and she immediately suggested, oh, we can do this and this to them, and I straight away said, no, I don't want that. I don't want that for them. Like, they don't deserve that. I can't believe I actually said that, but yeah. I said, no, that wouldn't be right. Can you do something that is, like, kind of passive aggressive, like, say, move them apart from each other, but make it seem like it's, you know, just like, oh, we're doing we're moving people around today because I feel like it. Because teachers would do that sometimes for no fucking reason, and it was kind of annoying how they would do that. They would just move you away from your friends for no apparent reason, and you just sat there with someone you don't know and have never spoken to and have nothing in common with. Sometimes it's good, sometimes you meet new people, sometimes it just means that your lessons are boring as fuck. And yeah, okay, one person can make the argument that, well, you're there to learn, not to sit and talk, but come on, man. I mean, one of the good things about school is your friends and meeting people. Do you know what I mean? But anyway, I wanted to protect them. I didn't want them to get in trouble. I didn't think that was right. I didn't want to be a snitch. And I explained to her, that my teacher as well, that, you know, if she would follow through with that, the bullying would intensify for me, because they would obviously know that I've, you know, told on them. And they would know that, you know, I'm just, you know, I don't give a shit. And I'm trying to get them in trouble. And I never wanted that. I just wanted them to realize that, like, this isn't okay. And the weird thing about this was, I don't know if they ever spoke to them about it, but they did the whole moving the class round thing. I said nothing. Nothing ever happened in class. They were never given any punishments as far as I'm aware. But the bullying did stop. They got on with their work. I got on with mine. We just ignored each other, and that was it. And we never spoke about it again. And it's kind of sad, but at the same time, you know, I didn't really know what else to do with the situation. I'm glad that it didn't intensify. I'm glad that, you know, some kind of resolution was made. I'm just sad. I'm sad that it kind of ended in that way, though. I'm sad that we never had a conversation where we were like, hey, you know, I wish you guys didn't do that, and like, this is how it was for me. And then, I don't know, maybe we apologized to each other, and like, well, not me apologizing to them, but you know what I mean. Like, we came. I wish we would have come to some kind of common ground and left it on a good note, because it's always been on a bit of a sour note for me. And like I said, I have moved on, and like I said before, you know, I would happily greet them in the street and stuff, but I'm never going to forget how they made me feel, and I don't think I'd ever have proper closure on it until we spoke about that in person. But I guess you're not really supposed to have closure in everything in life. Some things you just have to, like, learn from and take lessons from, and I guess the biggest lesson for me from all of that was trying to recognize the difference between bullying and between friendly banter between friends. Because some bullying is just bullying, and it's just people giving you shit for no reason. And often it's just strangers who don't know you, and it's like, ugh, whatever, who cares? But when it's your friends or family or people around you, you need to be very aware of that, because those are people that you respect, that you think are there for you, that have your best intentions in mind. And that's not always the case. And it's not always easy to see that they don't have your best intentions in mind. You know, you think, oh, they love me, they care about me, they respect me, they're my friend or family. Like, why would they be like that? But even they can be like that. So you've got to be kind of open-minded in terms of realizing, you know, that anyone can bully you. And I think you just have to have your eyes open at all times and really understand, like, hey, anyone can bully you at any time. Anyone can take advantage of you, manipulate you, whatever. Like, you just have to be alert to these things and have some respect for yourself, you know. Don't put up with it. If it is bullying, I mean, like I said, I would always suggest confronting the person about it first and foremost. I did confront them about it many times, and they would often just turn around and say like, oh, it's just banter, or oh, you're so sensitive. But, you know, you had no idea what I was going through. Like, my mind, how depressed I was, how much shit I had, you know, the fact that I had this bad relationship with my father, all of these things. Like, there was so much going on in my personal life that you didn't know about and I didn't talk about. And I mean, that's not your problem, but the bullying was your problem, and you just kind of accepted it. And I've never understood why. And I don't think anyone should accept it. You know, you got to stand up to these people, seek to find some resolution, or, you know what, if it gets too ridiculous, I don't think it's snitching if you are fearful for your life, you know. I never went to that degree with them. I never called teachers on them and got them in trouble or anything like that because, you know, I didn't believe in that snitching concept. And they never did anything to me that was like extreme. It was disgusting, it was nasty, it was embarrassing, but it was not like unforgivable or like, you know, like they weren't like beating me within an inch of my life or something. So there was no reason to get anyone else involved officially, and I always made sure that I never wanted to get people in trouble in that way, because I'd had people snitch on me before, and it's not a nice experience. And often you get snitched on for something that's like it's not even a big deal, but you get in loads of trouble for it just because that one person just snitched for no reason. So I didn't want to be that guy. And I don't think anyone should ever be that guy. But I do think that you have to put your safety like as the thing that you prioritize the most. You really have to care about your own safety and make sure that you're not gonna be unsafe. I mean, I don't know how else to put it, really. You know, it's just not worth getting hurt for. I think, you know, try to seek a resolution first. Try to talk to the person, because there's a lot more respect to be had if you can talk or stand up to a person versus going behind their back and just getting them in trouble. I mean, who can respect that, really? You know, and if you've made the effort to try and resolve it head on, then you've exhausted all the options. Do you know what I mean? I think it's a problem when people don't go for that option first. They don't try. They just go straight to snitching. It's like, who can respect that? That's just my personal take. I don't know. But yeah, these are my experiences with bullying. It was a long time ago. It is what it is. I learned my lessons. But yeah, I don't know. Tell me about your experiences with bullying. Tell me about how you overcame them, what you learned from them. I would love to hear about it. If you'd like to come on the podcast and talk about experiences with bullying, I would be more than happy to have you on to talk about it. Or, you know, if you would just like to be a guest on the show in general to promote a project or a business or whatever you would like to promote, I would love to have you on the show. I would love to interview you. Anyone who wants to return on the show and, you know, come again, you're more than welcome. I love to have repeat guests. I'm always open to have anyone on the show. I just want to put out a good podcast. I love doing this. I love talking to people. I love talking in general. So I guess this works as a good platform for that. Just want to say a big thank you to everyone that's been listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, all of the other different platforms that we're on. I think we're always seem to be coming onto new platforms. So yeah, Shout out to Anchor for making all of that possible. And also want to say thank you to everyone that's been listening on YouTube. I really appreciate the support. And if you have any ideas for upcoming topics that you'd like to hear me talk about, or upcoming guests that you'd like to suggest, or maybe you want to suggest yourself, please let me know in the comments below and we'll make it happen. Thank you so much for listening, and until next time, peace out. One love.